Rose Hill Cemetery, located in Macon, Georgia, was established in the year 1840. The cemetery consists of 50 acres and is located on the banks of the Ocmulgee River. Notable Macon Knights, the Allman Brothers, spent a lot of time here at the cemetery when they were writing their music, and even wrote some of their music based off some of the memorials found in the cemetery. They also took a photo for their first album cover located at one of the crypts in the cemetery. Dwayne and Greg Allman, as well as their drummer Butch Trunks and their bassist Barry Oakley, are all interred here at the cemetery now. While Rose Hill Cemetery is a beautiful and notable local landmark, it does have some issues facing it that I would say are preventing the dead from being able to rest peacefully. Here to talk to us about some of the issues facing the cemetery as well as her experience growing up around the cemetery, here is Dr. Shonda Slaughter Wilson.
Hi, I'm Shonda Slaughter Wilson, and I have a PhD in history from Georgia State University. There's so much folklore about disturbing resting places and what that does to an environment and where that will provoke a supernatural experience. You know, it's got such a diverse past, and there are so many interesting places in the cemetery. So you've got all the 6 different Jewish areas. You've got the Confederate soldiers part of the cemetery. You have the Allman Brothers. You've got the older crypts, and then you have like more popular sites like Martha, those landmarks. I've always heard that it was haunted, and even in my early 20s, a group of us went and did, the amateur ghost hunting photographs and like walked around and looked for orbs and all that sort of stuff. So like it always has that vibe. I mean, that cemetery is over 150 years old, and it has such different landscapes depending on what part of the cemetery you're in. And you've got the weird the river right behind it. You've got the overcrowding that was an issue. You have the slave graves that were discovered. And so yeah, I mean, it gives off that vibe. And I'm always inclined to believe ghost stories and things like that. And I've grown up. If you grow up around the river, that's what you hear. I won't go there by myself. um, I have a friend that does tours there near Halloween, and I've never been to one because it is like there are parts of that cemetery, especially if you go past Martha and you go near the crypts, when you go down the steps and it's overgrown. I mean, that is an eerie place because everything is grown up and there are holes in the walls and stuff like that. And people used to go and hang out in those, and I thought they were nuts. Of course, kids are going to go there and flock and do things that kids do, drink, maybe do drugs, smoke pot, um, go to the Allman Brothers' graves and do it, of course.
While vandalism caused by local teenagers is an important issue that the cemetery is facing, it also faces the issue of damage done in the flood of 1994, which greatly affected the area of the cemetery.
So the flood in 94 was this lifetime changing event. And if you were alive during that time, I was a teenager, I was 17. And I have like distinctive memories about the flood. And the weird thing about it is that even, memory can be problematic because we impose our own ideas into that memory once its time starts passing. But, that whole area was underwater. I 75 was blocked off for days because it was under more than 1 foot of water. Again, Rose Hill is on the river. When the river is high, there's certain areas where you can't go past, down far because the river's right there. And so, the water changed the landscape then because it pushed a lot of debris and things out of the way. I think there should be some sort of environmental barriers that they could probably build because eventually, especially with erosion and the way that the graves are stacked, I mean that cemetery is overcrowded. Uh, I think that as time goes on, they're going to have exposed sites, which could be a problem for everyone, families, burial sites, that sort of thing. So I think environmental barriers on Rose Hill's side of the cemetery is something that the city, it is a National Historic Site too, so
Mm-hmm.
you have some federal power there that you could put in place to protect the cemetery. There are parts of Rose Hill that you really have to hike down to get into these crevices, and it's still pretty.
The cemetery is without a doubt absolutely beautiful. Between all of the foliage, it contains many different types of beautiful trees, as well as beautiful gravestones and memorials. Despite the cemetery's beauty, it doesn't seem like a very peaceful final resting place, given the incredibly loud train that periodically goes by, as well as the construction being done on the Interstate I-75 and I-16.
They say that construction's going to go on for another year or so. That is going to be a problem until they finish it, and it's very odd because of where it's placed. I mean, it divides, part of the like you see the cemetery from the side of the road, and so I think that's going to have a continuous issue when you have an interstate in the middle of a burial area. That's weird.
I believe effort should be taken to fix these issues threatening Rose Hill Cemetery, as it is a very historic landmark and a very beautiful landmark in our city. In the book Rose Hill Rambles, Marshall Daughtry comments that, to young people for many generations, the cemetery has been a special area to visit in all seasons and enjoy the natural beauties, the legends, and the terraced plots, while brooding upon the evanescence of life and the serenity of death. It has been a place for lovers seeking new life amongst the ghostly monuments, for poets seeking to capture the essence of a spring day, for artists entranced in their multi-level splendor which challenged their paints, and for vandals seeking the destruction of treasured sculpture.